Hi everyone, this is Neg and Wasaki, and we are here. We're going to run you through a presentation that we created that could be a model for you guys who are about to embark on the global challenge, the X2 project, the final project for your global studies class. So, our presentation is dealing with dingoes. All right, so animal attacks worldwide are actually a really big issue, and they present a threat to not only humans but other animals and buildings, children. Anywhere there's people and animals together, you might have an issue with animal attacks. Every year, millions of people around the world are attacked by animals, animals such as wolves, dogs, bears, just to name a few. And a lot of this has to do with the human encroachment issues, which essentially are humans coming into contact with animals more and more because humans are living in more and more places. The other thing is that some of these animals, such as wild dogs, aka dingoes, wild dogs do surplus killing, which means even though they're not going to eat the food, they kill it anyway. So between the eroding of their habitats, which is eroding of the habitats because of climate change and surplus killing, and the fact that humans are encroaching on their territory, animal attacks are becoming a larger problem worldwide.
Our specific problem that we're dealing with are dingo attacks in Australia, specifically on Fraser Island, which is a national park in Australia that's famous for having dingoes on the island, and humans are camping and are kind of there with the dingoes. So typically, for most of the history of Fraser Island, the dingoes were there, and you could see them sometimes, but they largely stayed away from humans. They were afraid of humans. So you rarely saw them, if at all, and they almost never attacked humans. There's been a few cases over time of dingo attacks in Australia. The famous case in the 80s of the mother who claimed that a dingo killed her baby and then went to prison for murder, and then they found out later that the dingo did in fact eat the baby. That's one example of it, but now today there's a lot more of this happening. There have already been 3 attacks this year, which might not seem like that many, but for a place that has only a handful of attacks, ever, it's become a bigger issue, and the dingoes have become a lot more aggressive and a lot more interested in humans. So the specific problem here are the increased dingo attacks. It's becoming dangerous to tourists. Fraser Island is one of the most important tourist destinations in Australia, so having these dingo attacks is becoming a problem for that, specifically because they're primarily attacking children and the elderly, so people that cannot defend themselves against such an attack. And they're becoming a lot more bold and coming around humans a lot more when they used to be a lot more skittish and hide from them. So the Australian government has started an investigation on what to do to deal with this issue, and that's what we're going to be focusing on today. So what caused the increase in dingo violence in Australia? The first thing that caused it is the increase in tourists, specifically in Fraser Island. The number of tourists has gone up significantly in recent years, to the point where now there are just too many humans competing for land and resources with the dingoes. Another problem that is specific to the tourists is that they're feeding dingoes. So feeding any kind of wild animals, but specifically with dingoes, causes a problem because it causes them to no longer be afraid of humans. Before, they would always run away from them, but now they see them as a source of food, so they're going to come a lot closer to them, and can become aggressive when they are not given food by the humans. This has also caused an increase in dingo population because the dingoes are growing at the rate that they can eat, and because they have a larger access to food because of all the humans feeding them, now they get a lot more food. Um, and then that causes a problem because there's not enough food in the wild for the dingoes to eat to sustain themselves. Therefore, they're looking for the humans for food, and then that causes some of the attacks.
So we decided to take a look around the world in other regions, obviously not down in the Pacific region. We took a look first in Europe to see where they were dealing with other types of animal attacks, and we found out that in Denmark they had a wild boar issue. And even though wild boars and dingoes are different, these wild boars were attacking people relatively the same reasons as the dingoes are, human encroachment. And what they did in Denmark was they constructed a boar-proof fence on the border with Germany, which kept out some of the boar, but not all of them. And fencing worked in some of the cases of the boars attacking farms and farmers, but not all of the cases. They also they increased their hunting of wild boar, and the hunting was probably a little bit more effective because it just reduced the populations of wild boar.
Another issue that we looked at is the problem of wild monkeys in India, which has become a big problem for, again, a lot of the same reasons. So in India, specifically in Delhi, this has become a huge problem. There are over 40,000 monkeys living in Delhi that occasionally attack people, steal things, and sometimes kill them. Uh, just in October, a man was killed because a group of monkeys were in a tree and they threw bricks at him and killed him. And in 1990, the deputy mayor of Delhi was pushed out of a window and killed by a pack of monkeys. So the monkeys have, in fact, become fatal. These attacks are sometimes fatal there. So the solutions that they used, they did not turn to violent solutions because um, environmentalist groups and animal rights groups protested that. So they brought in larger monkeys that would scare off the smaller monkeys, but then that was protested because there were monkeys that were captives. So then they hired humans to make those larger monkey noises in the streets, which kind of works, but only until they stop making the noise and then they come back. But mostly they just use public information campaigns telling them things like don't eat bananas and other fruits and your monkeys and stuff like that, which has been partially successful, but not completely.
So we came up with a four-part solution that's been informed by some of the stuff that we read online. Number one is a public information campaign to make sure people know about the dingoes. Number two, limit the number of tourists on the island. That could be done through laws in the government, increasing penalties and strict enforcement of dingo laws, and finally, increasing the number of park rangers.
We're asking for $475,000 for this, which is under the budget that we were given. We're going to hire 6 new full-time park rangers at $62,000 per ranger, five 30-second TV ads on national TV for $100,000, 375 dingo warning signs similar to the ones you saw on the last slide, and those are only $8 per sign, which is a total of $475,000.
So one of the things that we learned this year through many of the current events we did in class was that, people are dealing with wildlife issues all over the world. And just because we're not dealing with this issue in the States, specifically with, either wild boar or dingoes, we don't want to prejudge the issues that they're having in other parts of the world. And that would be, ethnocentrism, essentially. We looked at some world organizations like the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, and they are very much trying to preserve the dingoes on the island and make sure that those dingoes are protected even as tourists continue to inhabit the island.
So this is just our works cited, so you can see the MLA and what it should look like. And that's the presentation. So it took us about 7 minutes to get through, which is the number that you should shoot for, about 5 to 7 minutes. And then we would reserve the final 2 minutes for questions from the judges. So the point of this presentation is really to dig into, this issue, a specific issue, and try to form a solution for it that can sustain, questioning from the judges about, what the costs would be and how it would work and stuff like that.